Hey guys, so I'm going to be making a cake today. It's called pineapple upside down cake. Hope you enjoy. So first thing that we have to do is measure out how much butter that we got. It calls for a quarter cup of butter, so you score the butter before you actually get to cutting into it. Now we're also going to need that melted, so we're going to take that cup of butter, put it in there, and we're going to get it around. We're going to keep it in there for about 30 seconds or so. But while we're waiting, we're going to go ahead and start on something else. I'm going to check back for the ingredients real quick. And the next thing that we need is some brown sugar. So, gonna get some of that. Gonna get our measuring cup. It should be over here. Let's see. Nope. Nope. Oh, there it is. Got it. Alright. Alright, let me clean up some of this a little bit. Oh, there's the butter. Alright. Yeah, we let it cook in for a little bit too long, but that's fine. It's nice and molten. Alright, checking back with ingredients. How much brown sugar do we need? Okay. Gotta do all the dry goods first, which includes the cake, flour. Let's get a couple bowls out. So we're going to be doing dry and wet. Yeah, may as well use all three. Why not? Start with the big bowl first. Gonna get all of our dry ingredients together. Gonna move all this stuff out of the way. Don't need all that in my way while I'm baking. Yep. Put these cherries over here. Checking back with ingredients. Always, always, always safe to double check your ingredients. Last thing that you want to do is put too much or too little. Alright. Yep. I'm gonna go preheat the oven to 375. Make sure nothing's in there. Alright. Alright, so it's telling us to first do the topping. So that's going to be on the bottom cake. This is why it's called upside down cake. So we put in the butter first. And then we're going to put in the brown sugar, which is a quarter of a cup. Alright, too easy. Where do I put that brown sugar? There it is. Alright, got it. Go ahead and get this out as much as I can. Typically, you're supposed to use a dry goods cup for this, but the only thing I got is wet, so this will work out just fine. I did this before, it'll work. You gotta lightly pack it. You don't want to pack it in too much, just scrape it around the edges, make sure it's nice and level. Yep. Need a little bit more. There we go. Spread that out a little bit. There we go. Everything looks good. Put our brown sugar back in the box. That's the last time we're going to need it. And we're probably going to put it away. Maybe, not too sure. Let's put it back here. Just to make sure if we need it again, we'll be good. Now, my counter is kind of slow, so I have to slosh that around a little. Alright. Now I have to sprinkle this evenly over the butter. I'm going to get it as good as I can. It's a quarter cup of brown sugar, so you can do whatever. It's kind of weird because sometimes I think it would just be better just to mix the brown sugar and the butter together and then pour it into the pan. But I'm going to follow the instructions as much as I can. There's some things that are just not going to be feasible, but this I can work with. Alright, put the rest of that in there, rinse it out because we're going to need some other ingredients, and I don't want to mix too much ingredients together. Sometimes they're not going to work out right. And we got to dry it out too because we're going to be using more dry ingredients, and the last thing we want to do is have that caked up on the bottom, even though we are making a cake. Alright, there, good. Alright, now we're going to slosh this pan around a little bit, see if we can get rid of that. And if that doesn't work, then we can just spread it out by hand. It's fine. It all gets baked anyway, so it's not going to hurt anything if you get your fingers in there. I'm going to spread it out to where we have a nice even mix. Mmm, yummy. There we go. Now what's next on here? Oh, too far. And next is the fruit. I'm going to go ahead and grab a can of pineapples. And we're also going to get these cherries going. Uh-oh. Where'd they go? There's somewhere. Let me see. No. Down there. Down there. Aha! There they are. Alright. I already made this cake before, so I already have some leftover cherries. So we're just going to finish off these before continuing on with that new bottle of cherries. Let's get the pineapples. There we go. And we're going to need to blot these pineapples because if there's too much juice in there, then we're going to have a overflowing cake. And then that's not fun, especially in my tiny oven. So if you use 2 paper towels, especially these really thin ones, you could get 2 of them together and you could dry off maybe 1 or 2 slices of pineapple. Stick it there, just blot it. Now it doesn't have to be completely dry because then that would defeat the purpose of having pineapples on your cake. But you do have to get all the excess on it. If it's damp, that's fine. Give it a couple good pats. And it's ready to go in the pan. And we're trying to distribute that brown sugar and that butter evenly, so we want to make sure that we don't get too crazy with just flopping it on there. And a little pat, pat, pat. Uh-oh, got a little bit of a tear. That's okay, it'll work. It's gonna go straight into the trash after this anyway, so no big deal. I'm gonna do a little bit of a press there, mix it up a little bit. And into the pan it goes. Alright. Next up, cherries. Well, let me wash my hands first. They're kind of sticky from handling all that pineapple. Alright, let's double check the directions. There we go. And what's next? Cherries. Alright. Now the cherries, we can start getting on the dry ingredients. So, cherries. Just gonna fish them out real quick. Press them in. Take off the stem on that one. Now, it's not a good idea to bake with stems because some of the stems will actually burn the cake from the inside. So it's better just to take off the stems and then put the cherries in. I gotta fish out that last one. A little difficult. Oh, dropped it. It's okay though. I got it. There we go. And set that off to the side because we don't need it right now. Wash the hands again because that cherry juice is super sticky. Super, super sticky. And we're back. So what's next? Yeah, check the ingredients again. Can't show you my guy's phone password. Alright, on to the dry stuff. So we need flour, we need baking soda, baking powder, salt, and a little bit of sugar. Alright, gotta make sure that's empty. That seems a little bit too big, so we're gonna go with a smaller bowl. We're just gonna use all 3 bowls like I was saying earlier. Put our rag back. Uh-oh, what's that? Okay, just ingredients. Alright. So we're gonna take our cake flour. It's going to need 1.5 cups cake flour. Alright, makes sense. It's a cake. So it has to be lightly packed. Because we want our cake nice and fluffy. Just gonna smash it on the counter a little bit. Make sure it's nice and even. Nice and level. Maybe a little bit more. Repeat the process. That seems about right. Yeah, we'll use that. Alrighty. There you go. And I'm going to put this away. Now what's next? We need we're going to need some baking powder and some baking soda. I saw that funny little spoon, so I was trying to think of what would be a better teaspoon. But that one just seems better. So we got baking powder. Hey, wait. Hold on a minute. Let me think about this for a second. Does it say baking powder or baking soda? Because it requires both. Okay. So we don't need a whole lot of baking soda, which is a good thing I stopped right there, because that seems to be about right for what I need. Dust that out a little bit. But we need actual baking powder. They're very similar because they're baking soda and they're baking powder. Each of them does a different thing. I think baking powder actually causes more of a rise in cakes and stuff, as to where baking soda enhances flavor or something. I'm not too sure. So that's 1 teaspoon. Bam. And a little bit more because I was a little bit off. I'm going to set that over there for later. Alright, now baking soda. How much baking soda do we need? 1/4 teaspoon. Alright. So Now we'll hold off on the teaspoon baking soda because I think we already got plenty. So we're just gonna go on ahead with the salt. I think it needs 1 teaspoon of salt. Yeah, that seems about right. Let's put that in there. There we go. Put all the waste in the sink. No, I think we need a little bit more baking soda, so we're gonna put a little bit more in there. What's it gonna hurt? Cake will still taste fine. And boom. There we go. Set that over there. Now what's next on the list? Ah, wet ingredients. So we're done with all the dry ingredients. So, oh, we gotta whisk it first. Very important. Gotta whisk it. Make sure all those dry ingredients are nice and mixed up, so that way we have a nice even cake. Because sometimes when you go to mix dry ingredients or you go to mix a cake and it's not quite what you need, it'll be pockets of whatever dry ingredient that it is. So like flour, baking soda, baking powder. You don't want pockets of that stuff. So that's why you got to mix all your dry ingredients together. Now we're on to the wet ingredients. So what all do we need for wet ingredients? We need butter. How much butter do we have left? We have about 3 tablespoons. We're going to need 6. So we're going to score that piece of butter right there. So we already scored it. We're just going to cut it, put it into the cup, and microwave it. Now the last time I made this cake, it was a little bit dry. So I'm going to add another tablespoon to it to make it a little bit more moist. Double checking how much butter I need. I'm going to be next after the butter. We're going to add another tablespoon to it because I'm not too sure what the percentage to make it more moist is, but I don't want to make it too moist because then nobody likes a soggy cake. Alright, set that knife down over there because I'm probably going to need it later. And we're going to put away our butter. See, when you score your butter like that, you don't have to ruin your casing for it or your wrapper for it. So when you score it, you know exactly how much you need right there, and then you can just cut it out, wrap it back up. Alright, now the directions also say to put the topping, which is butter, brown sugar, pineapple, and cherries, into the fridge. So we're going to make some room, throw that in there, and call it and let it chill for a little bit. See, after the butter, what else do we need? Gonna rinse that out because the wet ingredients, yeah, that whisk is dry. So the wet ingredients, they're not, they don't need a whole lot of room like the dry ingredients. So we got our butter, it's done. The only reason why we did this for a whole minute was because we didn't have so much butter to put into there in the first place. Alright, now it says it's supposed to be room temp, but the warmer the temp, the easier it is for the dry ingredients to mix in with it, like your sugars and all that. So before we start mixing anything, we're going to have to get the beaters on the butter. And we're going to have to beat it for a minute until it's nice and creamy. So here we go. Nothing. Why? Oh, it's not plugged in. Okay. Plug it in. Then start spinning. There we go. Don't really need to do a whole lot with the with the spatula just yet. It says mix it for a whole minute. So you see me check my watch every so often just to make sure how much time that we got.
What are you using?
Alright, it's been about a minute, so we're just going to go ahead and set that down for a second. We're going to go ahead and see what else is next. Alright, you guys can't see that, but what it's telling me to do is just that I need to get some more dry ingredients in there. So we're going to shake out some of that flour and baking soda and all that because we don't need it. Some of it in there is okay, not a big problem. But we're definitely going to need the sugar going. It requires a third cup of sugar. Gonna sift it down a little bit. Lightly pack it. It's a little bit too much, so we're going to put some of it back in. It's okay. There we go. Is that about right? Just a little bit more back in the bag. Looks good. Alright, so we're going to put this back into the bowl. So while we're pouring this to the bowl, the mixer is still going, so we're just going to keep going. Yep, gonna get that nice little mix around. Set that off to the side. Should take about a minute. While we're doing that, let's look for a spatula so we can get all the sugar off the sides. No spatula there. Now spatula in the drain pan. There we go. There it is. Make sure that we don't spill our butter and sugar everywhere. There we go. Alright, so it has to keep mixing until it's nice and creamy. And so it seems like that I'm just taking whatever's from the front and scraping it to the side, but actually I press it down into the bowl so that way I can actually get a little bit more friction and then turn that bowl while I'm scraping it from the side. There we go. Yeah, looks to be about a minute, so let's turn that off. Let it sit there for a second. And again, check in for directions. There we go. Next in our list of wet ingredients is going to be probably going to be egg whites. So let's rinse this out real good because we don't want any of the egg whites sticking on the inside of the cup with all the dry ingredients that we've been using. It's fine to have a little bit in there, but if there's a lot of dry ingredients in there, it's not going to work out too well. So let's put away the sugar since we don't need it for right now. Let's put away the salt, baking powder, baking soda, pretty much all the dry ingredients that we're done with. Clean as you go, because if you clean as you go, you have a lot less mess to pick up. Now we're going to need these egg whites. Now, it says for 2 eggs of egg whites. On the side of the carton, it will actually give you instructions on how many tablespoons or cups egg whites there are. So I think on this one it said 2 egg whites is a quarter of a cup. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to shut that cabinet so I don't bonk my head again. It's a little difficult to get it open, but it's okay. The important part is making sure it's open. Now again, 1/4 of a cup. Take it nice and slow. We're not in any rush. And put away the egg whites. Again, clean as you go, so we don't have to keep putting it away, and so it doesn't get nasty sitting on the counter. Another little sip. Alright. Again on high, and we're going to mix it for a minute. That seems to be the whole minute. It seems to be a whole minute for everything that we're going to be mixing together. So, just bear with me. It just seems like to be a whole minute on everything. So, as far as everything wet, because we want to make sure that everything's nice and creamy. There's the egg whites. Again, I'm going to make it nice and creamy, make sure that they're nice and well blended. Seems to be the whole part of this project is mixing it for a whole minute. Again, I'm going to be checking my watch, making sure that everything needs a whole 60 seconds or a whole minute. Somewhere around there. It's cooking. It doesn't have to be a definitive science at this point. Nobody's going to die if I, go an extra 30 seconds or an extra 5 seconds. So, they just have to be a roundabout area. Just making sure that the consistency is the same. Again, using the same technique as, as far as pushing the spatula down into the pan or into the bowl and then rotating it while I'm mixing to make sure that we get all the dry ingredients such as like the sugars and the flour and everything into there. Alright, we're going to set that down for a second, check up on the ingredients and the directions. Next thing we need is sour cream. It's kind of weird, but sour cream does work as kind of a it helps make a denser cake, but it also helps out making it fluffy because in and of itself sour cream is kind of fluffy. So we're going to put about 1/3 of a cup in here. And we're going to make it as level as possible with a spoon. That doesn't mean that it's going to be 100% perfect, but, that little bit does make a difference. We're going to set that aside because I think we have enough. Yep, we got enough. Put it back in, clean as you go. Last mess we have to pick up for the rest of us. Now you see here I'm kind of struggling with the spoon a little bit to try and get all the sour cream in, but the best thing to do is to take your silicone or rubber spatula and try and scoop all that out. You notice that there's a lot of residue left in there that we could use towards this cake. So what I'm also doing is taking the spoon that I've used, scraping it out with the spatula, and using what's left in the bowl, or in the cup, scraping out with the same spatula. Notice how I'm getting a lot more residue out, I'm getting a lot more ingredient out. So next time, I don't have to use a lot of ingredient or a lot of sour cream at this point. This works the same with your whipped toppings and your whipped creams and all that. Look at that cup. Almost basically dry. Now, our spatula, which definitely has a little bit of sour cream in there, we're going to try and mix everything in as best as we can. Again, using that same technique of putting force down onto the bottom of the bowl and turn it while we're scraping it to try and get the rest of the sour cream off the sides of the spatula. Alright, again, using the same technique, trying to bring everything around to the back. So how these hand mixers work is just that they'll take everything from behind them, and then they'll push everything out forward, which is why you would get those ripples in there towards the front of the beaters, but not the back. So that's the reason why we scoop around towards the back. So it's been about a minute, so we're going to check up on our directions and ingredients again. And the next piece after the sour cream is going to be our vanilla. Now we don't need a whole lot of vanilla, we need maybe a quarter of a teaspoon of vanilla, but I think I'll throw in a couple more dashes just for, safety's sake. So if you don't know what a teaspoon is, it's your small spoon inside your silverware set. Your big spoon is going to be a tablespoon, and I made a mess. It's okay though. Probably smell like Pillsbury Doughboy all over the place, but you know what? It's no big deal. We'll clean that up a little bit. Some paper towels, maybe some Lysol wipes later, and everything will be fine. Alright, moving on to mixing both the wet and dry ingredients. This is going to need us to mix everything, or going to need us to bake everything for 48 minutes, but I'm not too worried about that right now because we still need to mix the dry with the wet ingredients. So, got a couple more wet ingredients to go through, and the last one is milk. We need a third cup of milk. Alright, there's a little bit of sour cream left in there, so I'm just going to rinse that out real quick. Yeah, I'm not too terribly worried about washing it out. I just want to get the majority of the residue out. If there's a little bit of sour cream left in there, again, it's not that big of a deal, but we definitely need to get the majority of it out because it's going to throw off our measurement by a lot. And then that will make our consistency of our cake to be not as fluffy or not as moist or not as cake-like that we need it to be. So I'm going to put in for a third of a cup. A little bit more. There we go. And we're going to put our milk back. Just double checking. Third cup of milk. Alright, too easy. So we're going to mix this on high. Make sure that everything's nice and mixed together. Get that nice creamy texture that we need. Alright, make sure we stay after that whole 60 seconds or a whole minute. I'll put it on low. Keep that spatula in there for a second. Fine. Throw in our milk. And then we're going to mix this on low. Again, making sure it's nice and creamy, nice and fluffy. But you don't need to put it on high for milk. Otherwise, you're just going to make a whipped cream. If you make a whipped cream on there, it's not a big a deal. You know, you can throw it on as a topping, but it's definitely not the consistency that you need to make a cake. So, just keep it on low for about a minute. Make sure everything's nice and mixed together. Then everything will be fine. Otherwise, you're going to have whipped cream, which is going to be way too fluffy to mix in with the dry ingredients. You're going to have your pockets of dry ingredients such as flour, your baking soda, baking powder, whatever that you put it in there as far as dry ingredients go. Then you're not going to have a good time. So keep it on low, do it for about a minute, scrape along the edges, make sure that's nice and mixed together. And there we go. We got all of our wet ingredients mixed together. Now, there's going to be something else I'm going to put into there. Because I was going to use that rum that's over there by the sink and put it into one cake, but we do have some people that are not allowed to drink alcohol. So we're going to put in some rum into it, or some rum flavor. Typically, when alcohol is mixed into food, the alcohol will evaporate eventually. But for the sake of argument, we're going to say that we're just going to put in rum flavoring. So we got our big bowl here. I'm going to throw in our wet ingredients. At the bottom, always wet first, then dry. The reason why is because you'll see here in a minute, because when you throw in your dry ingredients first and then you're wet, you'll have those pockets of dry ingredients that'll just like explode into a powder and then make a mess all over your kitchen. This is where you put in the wet, or you put in your wet for your dry ingredients, you'll have less of a mess. Yeah, we're gonna rinse off our hands real quick. Have a little sip. Now here's our rum extract. Now on the side of the box it says to use a quarter of a teaspoon. You have to say use a quarter of a teaspoon for eggnog and whipped creams, things of that nature. But since we're making a cake, we're going to use a little bit more than a quarter of a teaspoon. We're probably going to use about a half. I'm just making sure that we get, the lid and everything off so that we can actually use this flavor. Again, if you're comfortable with, using actual rum, go for it. But I'm not 100% confident, so I'm going to use rum flavoring. There we go. That looks about right. Put that in there, and we're going to add a couple more drops into there. There we go. That's our wet ingredients. Going to put all of our dirty dishes inside one bowl. Again, keeping it up with the clean as you go. I'm not going to worry too much about using the spatula over here because it's wet on wet and the rum is very, very wet. But we are going to try and put the dry ingredients in with the wet. It seems like I'm still making a little bit of a mess with this. Yeah, it's still clouding up a little bit. It's not that big of a deal. If you do get a little bit of a mess, just turn off your mixer, take your spatula, and just fold everything into place. So that way you have a less likelihood of hitting those dry spots and making a mess out of your kitchen. And then you can actually start mixing to make sure all the ingredients are in there. The thing is with Swan's Down and a bunch of other cake mixes. Not necessarily box store cake mixes. Like if you get cake flour, then this would be a good idea to do. Use your spatula to get in those wet ingredients with the dry ingredients, and then mix it. So that way you don't make so much of a mess. So you can already see on my mixer where it's white, where I just try to pour in the dry mix with the wet. And then now, after I mix everything with the spatula, we're not having so much of a mess. And we're going to keep on mixing for about a minute or so. That seems to be the case on everything. Got a couple buddies there watching me do my thing, making this cake. That's okay. Now, it will seem to be pretty darn thick to be a cake mix, but that's okay, because when you get it out of the oven, it's going to look tremendous. Trust me. I'll show you a picture at the end of this. We're going to stop it right here because it seems like everything's nice and mixed. Got to wipe off all that cake flour off my phone. And double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking. Alright, we got all these ingredients already in there, making sure we didn't miss anything. Because before we go to bake, this will be the time to make sure that we get all the ingredients in there. Alright, so we need to get our aluminum foil out. So when it comes to really wet cakes like this, the reason why I say it's really wet is because you do have those toppings on there, like the pineapple and cherries. And if you have a really wet cake, it's not going to cook effectively. It's not going to cook all the way through if you don't throw tinfoil over top of it. It's very important that you do that. Double checking the ingredients and everything. Alright, now we got to take all this cake batter and distribute it evenly over top of the toppings. It's kind of weird because the toppings are on the bottom, but that's what makes it an upside down cake, because all the toppings are really heavy and you want to have your cake on the top. All your heavy toppings like your pineapple, cherries, and whatnot, you want to have on the bottom. So you can actually do whatever you want with this. Like if you really want to do like an avocado cake, I mean, sure, go for it. Make sure your avocados are on the bottom for the topping, because when you flip it over, that's going to be very important. So your avocado stays on the top. Otherwise it'll sink to the bottom or the middle or what have you, and it's not going to turn out as good as you hoped it would. Alright, now here's where having a spatula comes into play as far as making everything even. Because you notice that on the corners we don't have a whole lot of cake there, or we have no cake at all. So you take as much cake as you can out of the bowl. Very delicious, by the way. And you're going to spread it out with your spatula. Now don't be afraid to, smear it around, make a little bit of a mess. It's okay. It's a cake, It's baked in a pan. It's not like, you're making a sculpture. You're making a cake. So push it into the corners, get a little bit more into the corners. Take a little bit out from the center. It's fine. It's okay. You just don't want to have that brown sugar and that butter to come up in between the middle of your cake. That just wouldn't work out too well. You could also use the back of your butter knife and then scrape off the rest of that cake right there. Then you can splash it on where it needs to go. Now don't use the sharp side, use the blunt side. That's the side where you usually put your finger on when you cut a steak or cut a burger or cut anything. Okay, you don't want to ruin your plastic spatula or your silicone spatula. Now we're double checking to see how long we need to put it in there for. We're going to put it in there for a whole 48 minutes. Now, I know I didn't do it here, but I was supposed to put some tin foil on top of it, which is no big deal. You know, I found out within like the first 5 minutes. Put it over top of it, no big deal. And 45 minutes later, here's the pineapple cake. So, if you guys like this kind of cake, or if you guys want to check out the descriptions below, and subscribe to more videos, and then I'll get some of these out there to you. So, thanks again, subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.